Hi y'all, this is section 4.2, and in chapter 4 we'll be discovering more rules for taking the derivatives of different functions. Now hopefully before you've pressed play you've already tried the first 3 problems, and hopefully you already have an idea of what the derivative should be. Or you've struggled through and thought, I don't know if I know how to take the derivative of this. Okay, so for the first guy, f of x equals sine of 3x, then the derivative, f prime of x, we look at this as the sine of something, so the derivative of sine of something should be cosine of something, times the derivative of that something. So times the derivative of 3x, which would just be 3. So we could say our derivative here was 3 cosine of 3x. So in that problem, all we had to use was the derivative of sine and chain rule. Okay. For number 2, f of x equals 4 sine of 3x. The exact same problem, we just have a 4 out in front this time. So you'll get the exact same answer. If you have a coefficient of 4, you just bring it down. So the derivative of 4 sine of something will be 4 cosine of that something times the derivative of that something. So the only difference here is that we get a bigger coefficient out in front. Okay? But what I tried to have you do here is to connect what we already could do to number 3 here. Number 3 out in front we have a 4x. Okay? And then we have a sine of 3x. So the thing out in front is no longer just a number. We actually have another function. Okay? Right now, we do not have the tools to do this problem. Okay? Because we have 2 functions that are being multiplied together, and that's a product. It's not a composite function. Okay? You can't look at my elephant and tiger and all that and imagine what's on the outside and what's on the inside. These 2 functions are sitting right next to each other. This sine does have a hidden function underneath, but this guy is just 4 times something. Okay? So we do have 2 functions and we're multiplying them by each other. And that's why right now we're not prepared to do a problem like that until we know the product rule. Okay? So the product rule here in section 4.2, we're going to learn that if we have 2 functions that we're multiplying together, so if f of x equals g of x times h of x, okay, so it's not a composition of functions, we have 2 functions that are being multiplied, then the derivative will be, so I'm sure in this last problem, maybe you were thinking, alright, what's the derivative of 4x? Well, the derivative of 4x is 4. The derivative of sine of 3x, we had already gone through that. The derivative of sine of something is the cosine of that something times the derivative of the inside times 3. Okay? But the f prime of x will not just equal the product of these 2 things. Okay? And we'll come back to this problem. Actually, why don't you come back to this problem after we're done with the lecture and see if you can now successfully state what the derivative should be. Okay? But both of those pieces will be involved in the derivative. Okay? So what you're going to do, if you have g of x times h of x, you'll take the derivative of the first function, multiply it by the second function, and then add that to the first function multiplied by the derivative of the second function. Okay? So f prime of x will equal the derivative of the first, g prime of x, times the second, h of x, plus the first function, g of x, times the derivative of the second function. Okay? So basically you're taking all 4 parts, the original functions and their derivatives, and you're combining them in this form. Okay. In words, I want you to know you're taking the derivative of the first, so derivative of first times the second, and then plus, we're going to be adding the first function times the derivative of the second, times deriv of second function. And those are the words that you want to know for a product rule. Okay? Tomorrow we'll be looking at the quotient rule, so something divided by something else. And this will be involved in the quotient rule, just one little slight difference. So if you can memorize this, it will really help you for the quotient rule. Okay? Alright, first example here, we have f of x equals x times the sine of x. Okay, so hopefully you recognize that before product rule we could have not done this problem unless that was a number. For sine of x we could do, but x sine of x, 2 separate functions.